Ahoy YouTube, it's Mimi from Card Fight Crash Course, here bringing you another deck tech today for Murakumo. A substandard deck for sure, not very many people play it, play against it, and I've even heard some people say it's the worst deck in Premium. I don't know what the worst deck is, that's not a question for me. I do know that this deck is not that. This deck is quite strong. You have a really interesting combo that you can do using our friend's setup here that I'll show you. I'm going to show you the combo before we do our deck, because if I'm just kind of showing you our deck talking about some nebulous combo, it might not all make sense. You might be a little confused as to what I'm talking about. So we're just going to go over the combo first and foremost, and then we'll finish breaking down the rounding cards for the list after that. We are going to have to take a few rules quirks into account as we do things, but don't worry, I'm a professional. I know all the rules, so don't worry about it. Check this out. It starts out by abusing Fright Sickle. This way we can get offense and defense all in one. Fright Sickle, which I may or may not call Death Sickle a few times, is a grade 2, who says when it attacks, it can get power plus 5,000. And then at the end of the battle, you have to bot deck him if you got the plus 5. But if he was called by a card effect, you draw a card. So we're trying to abuse this to attack with it and draw with it as many times as possible, because it can be quite challenging to set up all 4 of them on board. Because how could you call all of them by card effects? Especially since Murakumo's big thing is cloning. So like if we're going to use a Hiden Scroll, a very powerful card from G era, a stand trigger that says you can put it on the top of your deck when it's placed. You can do that, and if you do, choose a card that's not named Hiden Scroll, search your deck for 2 cards with the same card name as it, call them a separate rearguard, and shuffle your deck. And those cards are shadow clones, so that means at the end of your turn they're going to go back. So if you had one of these on board, and you called 2 Fright Sickles, you'll only be able to call 3 from your deck, and you won't be able to get their full effects. So we're going to need to combo with some additional rear guards so that we can still have the name Fright Sickle on board without having a literal physical Fright Sickle on board. So that's where our friends Juan Chanter and Awazu come in. Awazu's simpler, so we're going to start with Awazu. Well, it starts out being simpler. A grade 2 that says when it's placed, you search your deck for a card, put it in your drop zone, and then he gets that card's name. That means that he has 2 names. His name is Awazu and whatever you send. So if you have a Juan Chanter who has 2 effects, the second effect is the most important one. The second effect is put a normal unit from your drop zone on the bottom of your deck. Choose one of your other units, change this card's name to that card's name, and it gets boost. This card gets boost. And then his second effect can come in handy at the beginning of your ride phase, counter +1. Choose one of your units, that means even him. Search your deck for up to 1 card with the same card name as it, and call it to rear guard. You actually almost exclusively use it to call additional copies of him, because he's one of our great little combo pieces. He extends our combo farther, so having one of him on board is neat. But if you don't have the counterblast, then you don't bother. But if you do, then you go ahead. Our last extender, Itohiki Girl, we'll get to in a minute. We'll go over it now, whatever, just so that we're all on the same page. The first effect is YSR Extender. When it's boosted, you can counterblast 1 to search your deck for a card with the same card name as one of your units, call it, and shuffle. And then it has that V-Cycler effect where you can discard out, check the top 5 to add something. As you've noticed, all of our combo pieces are grade 2s, so this is pretty impactful for our early game in order to help us ride to grade 3. And then we're at grade 3, it lets us extend our combos further, because we can call Hiden Scroll off of this effect, and then that can get us 2 extra attacks and then 2 extra draws. But she's like a bonus on top of our combo and isn't part of our main combo. So we'll get to her in a second. Last but not least, we have Yasui, our main grade 3 to ride. He's very impactful with his on-stride effect. His second effect, when he is stridden upon, you can counterblast 1, search your deck for 2 cards with the same card name as one of your units and call them to rear guards. Then shuffle your deck. Those are shadow clones, so they go back at the end phase, but that actually can be a plus and not just a minus. Like, the fact that they go back can be an upside is what I'm trying to say. And then because of his second effect, that GB2 effect, when one of your units goes back to the bottom, search your deck for that card and call it to rear guard, which we can use to do something very fancy, which we'll get into later. But since he's Yasui, that lets us use the Ushimitsu train, which has the history stride effect, so you can act stride it during your main phase as long as you haven't gained any gifts yet. Its attack hit effect always works, and then when its attack does hit, choose one of your rear guards, search your deck for 2 copies of it, call them to rear guard. They're shadow clones, but that's okay. So if we can use the train on Hiden Scroll, and use Hiden Scroll on Sickle, that's on a copy of Sickle, then we can get 4 additional attacks and 4 additional draws. So if you weave in an Itohiki Scroll, and you have all 3 of your other front row circles filled with Sickle, then you can get 9 draws. 1, 2, 3, she gets you 4, 5, and then your Vanguard will get you 6, 7, 8, 9 draws, which is pretty clutch. That's a lot of draws, which is why these here are Excel 1 gifts and not Excel 2 gifts, because we're going to be drawing so many cards that we don't necessarily need to draw 2 additional cards. Like, yeah, 2 additional cards would be nice, but the 5Ks really add up and they make us hit a very important breakpoint. This gets that +5, right? So it's swinging for 14, plus an Excel 1 gift makes it swing for 24. If this was an Excel 2 gift, it'd be swinging for 19, which means if you're playing against a Force number grade 2, or a Standard number grade 2, or any grade 3s, once they hit a 10k trigger, our large, impressive number attacks no longer hit. So it doesn't matter if we're attacking them 2 times, 100 million times, they all bounce off. So if we can hit them over 1 defensive, they have to check a lot more, and by that I mean 15k total before our pressure gets turned off. And even if they check 15k, if they're playing a 9k, we're still matching them, and it's pretty neat. You, of course, can take Excel 2 if you're bricked, but most of the time, I would highly recommend choosing Excel 1. The breakpoints are very important. The extra 2 draws fall off really quick, but over the course of the game, even just your first stride turn, this is going to be 20,000 additional power, assuming you get 4 attacks off of it between Excel 1 and 2. Excel 2, you're getting plus 5k. Over Excel 1's giving you 5k more power per attack. And then if you're doing it at least 4 attacks, which is just your base stride, can call 2. So if you have 2 things on the gifts, stride calls you 2 more. That's 20,000 more power that turn. But then you get to do that again the next turn, and the next turn, and the next turn. And the impact from that will be worth a lot more than 2 draws. So never always, but usually you want to be taking this to do your combo. So let's see the combo in action. So you start off by riding to grade 3. And you'll have a Huan Chanter, or a Hiden Scroll, Sickle, or a Wazoo. Having all of these cards is unlikely, but you're going to have some permutation of these cards. You're going to have something, because when you have this many, usually you'll draw 1. The simplest combo would just be to call these 2, History Stride during our main phase, use our own stride effect, Counterblast 1, search our deck for 2 Hiden Scrolls, bloop bloop. Each Hiden Scroll gets us a Sickle, and we can get, we can swing with all of these, but if we swing with this one, we kind of fizzle. So we swing with these 3, draw 3, swing with our Vanguard, call them back, and we get 8 attacks and 6 draws, which is it's nothing to shake a stick at. That is an impressive amount of attacks and draws, just like that. But we can go even further beyond, because remember, we want to have something copy this. So if we have a Huan Chanter, like if we use our additional Counterblast from our opponent's if we're going first and we're playing against somebody who's mindlessly going ride, swing, vanguard, pass, ride, swing, vanguard, pass, we'll have 2 counterblasts. We can use 1 for our Enchanter, and then 1 for our on stride effect. But we could be a little more clever with how we do things. Once we have our 4 Frightsicles, we can use Enchanter to become Frightsicle, which is pretty neat. So, like, if we could call over this Frightsicle. Shoop. Then we can use Enchanter to put this back and become Frightsicle. And now, since it's in our deck, we'll have access to it off of this. We can swing with these 2, draw 2, swing with our Vanguard, or swing with Itohiki Girl, copy Hiden Scroll, copies Death Sickle, Fight Sickle, you call 2, you draw 2 more cards, that's 4, swing with that for 5, swing with your Vanguard, call them back out, 6, 7, 8, 9 draws, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 attacks. And that's not bad. That's quite good, in fact. But in order to do that, you would need a 3rd counterblast or to have not drawn this Enchanter, which can be a little challenging sometimes. So it's not the most consistent, again, because that's a multiple card combo right here. But what if you don't have combo pieces? What to do then? Well, I've got something really special for you. A secret combo with Awazu. Awazu might not look like much, but just this 1 card can get us our full combo. And it's a good way to help conceptualize how you're going to do this, because each additional thing that Awazu is going to get from deck, if we've drawn that card, then we can skip a step and then get additional attacks and draws. So from nothing, we ride Yasui, call Awazu. Awazu's skill, he becomes Hiden Scroll. We History Stride, we get our markers, we counterblast 1. Yasui lets us choose one of our cards, and we search our deck for 2 cards with the same name. Remember, this card has 2 names, so it's a perfectly valid play to search your deck for 2 cards with its name. So we can call Hiden Scroll and Awazu. These both go on standby, so it's totally fine to resolve this Awazu to become Enchanter, and then resolve this Hiden Scroll to become another Awazu and a Enchanter. Enchanter, Awazu. Awazu sends Frightsicle to the drop zone. Now we can use Enchanter here to put this Frightsicle back on the bottom of our deck, and his name becomes Awazu and Frightsicle. So that we can, when we go to our battle phase, we can attack for 18k, 19k, 19k, 27, or 26. And then we can search our deck for 2 Hiden Scrolls, because we have a Hiden Scroll. And each Hiden Scroll can copy an Awazu. So, an Awazu that is a Frightsicle, or a Enchanter that is an Awazu that is a Frightsicle. And bam, 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 you've got that. Thank you, ma'am. It's pretty neat. So you can extend this. So like if you have already gotten a Hiden Scroll, then you can just call those both, so that when you are calling things from your deck, or this first one can become Enchanter. You use your on stride. You get Awazu. Well, I guess you search for 2 Hiden Scrolls, sorry. You get 2 Hiden Scrolls. The first Hiden Scroll becomes Awazu, who becomes fright sickle. The second Hiden Scroll can get you 2 fright sickles. Wait. I didn't get the Huanchanter from it. I was like, this feels wrong. So you target this to get this Awazu, but that Awazu comes with a free Huanchanter. Then you resolve the second one, targeting the one that became Fright Sickle to get 2 draws. So let me show you that one more time. We History Stride. We use our On Stride to target Hiden Scroll. We get 2 Hiden Scrolls. We resolve 1 Hiden Scroll, targeting a Wazoo that is Huanchanter. I guess you won't want that Hiden Scroll there. So that we can get Huanchanter and a Wazoo. A Wazoo becomes Fright Sickle. Hiden Scroll gets you 2 more Fright Sickles. There you go. Look at that. If you had, instead of instead of Hiden Scroll, you had, like, let's say, use one of your counterblasts earlier to get you a Huanchanter. Then when you call this, you become Hiden Scroll. You act Stride using your second counterblast to search your deck for Hiden Scroll plus Awazu. As much as it would be delightful to get 2 Hiden Scrolls, then they wouldn't be able to copy the Awazu that is Hiden Scroll, so we couldn't get Fright Sickle in rotation in this particular board state. So we would get a Hiden Scroll and an Awazu. The Awazu becomes Fright Sickle. Hiden Scroll resolves. We get 2 Fright Sickles. And then we can use Huanchanter to put this Fright Sickle back into our deck so that when our Vanguard is able to attack, we still have all 4 Fright Sickles left in our deck so that we can still get 4 calls. So we still get 6 draws and 9 attacks. Pretty good. And the pattern continues from there. So every additional thing you draw is something simple that you can extend with. Each piece of the thing you call with a Wazoo, if you already have, saves you a step. You don't have to use a Wazoo to become that. But a Wazoo can become any part of the missing piece of your combo as long as you do it right. So I would recommend, if you pick this deck up, to spend time practicing what to do with your hands, because you can get kind of clogged on having too many combo pieces in your hand, which I know sounds really strange, but you can get like analysis paralysis because like your default combo isn't now what you gotta do. You have to do something different than what you normally do. And thinking on your feet can be very challenging with a timer ticking down in a large tournament. So taking the time to practice these things can be quite impactful. Few little tips before we move on. When you're doing your combo, there are strange things you can do to make sure that you can get all of your draws off of Fright Sickle. Because if you're doing your combo and you Fright Sickle or your drive check draws you a Fright Sickle, you can no longer call it off of your Vanguard's effect. Well, off of the Hiden Scrolls that were called by your Vanguard's effect. So you will no longer be able to get the extra draw and attack. So it's really catastrophic. So that's why you want to try to find ways to get all 4 of these on the bottom of your deck at once so that you can't draw them. So you can end up doing something really silly sometimes where like a Huanchanter, a Hiden Scroll, an Itohiki Girl, and then 3 Fright Sickles. And like, I don't know, this one put one on, well, it'll be somewhere, and you're just gonna have to pray that you're not gonna draw this one. But you can, instead of praying not that you're gonna draw this one, you can do something a little silly. You can swing with this Fright Sickle, get your draw off, it goes to the bottom. Then when you swing with Itohiki Girl, As long as you didn't draw the one other Frightsicle, you can use a Counterblast to call over itself, which I know is really silly because this happens on attack when it's boosted, not like at the end of the battle. So you cancel out your attack by calling over it, but now you can spin with all 4 of these, and all 4 of them will be on the bottom of your deck so that you can't draw any of them. This can come up if your opponent like checked like over trigger off of your first swing or something silly, or you know that they're going to be doing, if you know they're up to no good, you know what I mean. You might want to consider doing something like this. It doesn't normally work out that way, but it can be in clutch. The other side of the same coin of wanting to have all of them on the bottom of your deck before you do your combo so that you don't draw them and mess it up is after you've done your combo and all 4 are at the bottom of your deck, you can be in a really awkward spot where how do you get them back out to do your combo again next turn? Here's the secret, Captain. If you have one of like a Huanchanter or an Awazu that was a shadow clone from your play earlier, since if either of them have became a Frightsicle, the way the rules work lets Yasui see the name of the card that was on board being returned. So even though this is an Awazu in deck that you returned, its name was Awazu and Frightsicle, so you search your deck for a card with the same card name as that card. Not that card as in this physical card, but that card as in like the game states version of that card. Like how if you call over something and it goes to drop zone, it's the same physical piece of card, but it's no longer that card as far as effects are concerned. The same thing happens. That card in this case is Awazu and Frightsicle, so you have the name Frightsicle so that you can call it from your deck. And then once it's back from your deck, if you've got that Hiden Scroll from next turn, then you're straight vibing for next turn. You can on stride again, pick Hiden Scroll, get 2 Hiden Scrolls. Hiden Scrolls gets you 3 Frightsicles back. And they are pretty safe in the back row. It's a pretty clutch way of doing things, so consider that. Sometimes you might want to make sure to have one left. Sometimes you might even consider not attacking with one if it's not going to hit your opponent's Vanguard anyway. Because, yeah, you could draw 1 card, but drawing 1 card is not an equivalent value for losing access to your combo. So if that last one is going to lose you access to your combo, you have to be careful not to just throw it away like that. Very, very last thing before we move on to the actual deck. I know it's a lot, but there is something pretty special you can do that is part of the deck construction here, because I spent a long time working on this deck. Right now, actually, this deck is 49 cards, which that sounds ridiculous, but it does have a 50th card. It's backwards face down as like a weighted training card. The deck works just fine with a useless card. So you can play literally anything you want in that slot, and the deck is still going to work fine, which I think is absolutely beautiful. It's considering how wide open the format has become, it leaves us flexible to deal with threats however we want. But how can we work this into our main combo? Well, let me show you. You can't do it just off of a solo Awazu play. Awazu by themselves is not going to be enough. But let's say you have a decent setup where you've got a Huanchanter that maybe you counterblasted 1 to call so that you can skip a step. You're going to need an Awazu. And we could say a Hiden Scroll. It could probably be a Frightsicle instead of a Hiden Scroll, but something. You need something. Just a little extra. What you do is when you act stride, you counterblast 1. You get your 2 copies of Hiden Scroll. You use this Awazu needs to become like whatever we're missing in our combo. So right now he becomes Frightsicle. Actually, yeah, that's fine. We can get these. We resolve a Hiden Scroll to get a Sickle and an Awazu. Awazu's on standby, but we'll resolve this to get 2 Sickles. And then this Awazu can search our deck and become literally anything. There's that tech card. Literally anything. So when we do our whole combo, blah, 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 but make sure that we put back this mystery card, especially if it's our one of. We put back our one of. We hope we don't draw it. And then once our whole combo shakes out at the end of the turn, since this was a shadow clone, it bot decks. But remember what I said about Yasui seeing the name of the card that was on board? So we can search our deck for anything and call it to rearguard. Anything. Anything. That's pretty neat. You can do a lot of cute stuff with that. You can hold up Honolese. You can hold up Peeker. You can hold up perfect guards. You can hold up G Guardian fodder. Because we have G guards that let us bounce our rear guards, and ones that let us move them to Guardian Circle, and ones that let us choose something on our board and call a copy of it from our deck. So maybe you don't always choose this one, but you could choose something else that you would like to block with from your deck. And you can do some pretty cute stuff with this. The tech to use Awazu to search your deck for any card can come up, especially if like you know what is going to be specific out to your opponent's strategy. Like you know that they're not going to be able to get through a Honolese, then Honolese is a good choice. If you know that you have to PG or you're going to lose, and you can just go get one. You have to be a little careful though, because some perfect guards don't work when they're moved to Guardian Circle. A lot of them, the older ones, will say when placed. When placed and being put are two different things, so you have to be careful with that. But that pretty much covers everything I wanted to cover for the combo. The sick techs of using Awazu to get literally anything. I mean literally anything. You can do whatever. Like I said, you send any card. You put that card, as long as it was a normal unit, so don't try doing this with draw trigger perfect cards, otherwise you might have an issue. You can do all sorts of cute stuff. That same tech that you can use to make sure that all of these aren't stuck on the bottom of your deck, you can use that same tech to hold up interaction. You just have to be very mindful of how you do this, because there's a lot of give and take. You can't do everything, because, if you're calling your tech from your deck, then you're not calling this. So you have to be very mindful of what cards you use and why. You don't want to autopilot too much with this deck, especially considering how flexible the combo is. You have to kind of build it a little bit each time. There'll be some times where you can kind of just do the same thing that you've done before and that you've practiced, but you want to have like not exactly a flowchart, but something similar, kind of like a decision tree. Like how I said, you think of the Awazu full combo, where you Awazu for Hiden Scroll, for Awazu Wanchanter, for Wanchanter Awazu, which is Sickle, which puts back the Sickle, because then each of those, all of the cards involved, so then each time you draw in one of these other cards, you can skip a step. You have steps to your combo so that you know which ones you can skip and which ones you have to finish out the old-fashioned way. That pretty much covers it for our main combo here. That's what we are trying to do. That is our deck's winning image. It's pretty spooky to be attacked 9 or 11 times while you're on grade 2. In fact, sometimes if your opponent just tries to check damage triggers, they just go to 5, they never find one, they can just die. It can be really, really scary, which is why it's very important to take XL1 instead of XL2 if you have the combo. If you don't have the combo, of course, sometimes it's important to take XL2, but if you do, the extra 5k hits over those breakpoints. If that's all you were interested in was the combo, this is 30 minutes is a good stopping point for you. You can probably peace out now. Check my deck log in the description. But from here out, I'm going to be going into detail over every card we're playing in the deck and why we're playing it, what we're not playing, which could take a while. So feel free to get on with your day. But if you are really curious, then I have got the information. All right. So if you were paying close attention, every one of our combo pieces is a grade 2, 7 of which we are against riding, 7 of which we really don't mind riding. 7 ride targets, I know it sounds a little strange, but 7 is actually plenty. 5 is usually like the bare minimum, so you have more than that. And then we can ride these even if we don't want to. We can. We've got our grade 3s, 4 copies of Yasui. But we need something else, not just Yasui, because remember, to act stride, we can't, it's not stride the skill, which affect stride fodders, like those crits and those grade 1s that say when you're paying the cost to stride, you get grade plus whatever to become 3. Those don't work when you're paying the act stride cost, since it's different. It's an act skill, not the stride skill, so those don't work. So you're going to need extra grade 3s, and even if we count our heal trigger grade 3s, which you have to do, you will have to pitch these to stride a lot. It's unfortunate, but it's just what we have to do to make the combo work. You're still going to need a few more. You want 11 cards in your deck to be able to comfortably stride. And we currently have 8, so we need at least 3 more. And considering how tight I was trying to make this deck, we have exactly 3 more. We have a very small Shiryuki package, 2 Fantasy Petal Storm Shiryuki, and 1 6-flower Fractal. So how we like to do this is it gives us a little bit of top end, so that that like combo where we attack a whole bunch of times is neat. But if our opponent has been playing a defensive strategy, they can eat those can be 1-card blocks. If they just have a 12-card hand, then it doesn't matter, or they interrupt us a little bit. But we can then give a little more ceiling on our combo to break through once we've drawn half of our deck. If we've drawn half of our deck, we'll draw one of our 2 of 6 Fantasy Petal Storm Shiryuki. It says when it's placed, you can Soul Blast 2, choose 3 front row units, and they get -5 if it's on rearguard. But if it's on Guardian or Vanguard, they get -10 instead. And then it has a Shadow Stitch skill on Vanguard, which we're going to hope that never comes up, because we are really not trying to be on it on our Vanguard circle for an attack. It could come up, but we would really prefer it doesn't. You don't want to use that block skill unless you have to. The other Shiryuki has a similar block skill, but instead of giving 3 units -10, it gives 1 unit -30. And then second skill, you have to have a Shiryuki Vanguard, but when any of your units' attacks don't hit, you can counterblast 1 and choose one of your opponent's front row units, and it gets -10 until end of turn. So if you ride this Shiryuki, you give their Vanguard -10, and then you can call this Shiryuki from your deck using a convoluted method. Then you can give them -20. Yeah, sure, the -20 won't be on the first attack, but if we have 2 plus a 3rd Excel circle, and we stride Izushi Otome, which that's our back row attack, then that's +20, except for one of them that's only getting +10. So it's 170,000 shield they'll need in order to hard guard everything, which that's on top of their base numbers. So that's essentially game over without having to play a huge package. Because at one point I was playing a lot more Shiryukis, and it was kind of like a Shiryuki kind of deck. But in the end, I've just decided to focus on doing this combo with our grade 2s here. It felt a lot more consistent. It felt so much stronger. Because before, instead of having Fright Tickle in order to make the Shiryukis work, I was playing a card called One-Eyed Stealth Fiend Nudo, who, yeah, it would draw me 4 cards, but it would only draw me 4 cards, which, oh no, only 4 cards. You would take some Excel 2 gifts, that's only 6 cards. But you can only do that one time. Nudo goes to Soul to fuel our Shiryukis. This goes to bottom of our deck to fuel doing it again. So this has a much better economy, per se. while we're touching on it, the convoluted process to get this card from our deck, even if it's in our drop zone for whatever reason, as long as it's not in our damage zone, we can use Huanchanter, because Huanchanter says it can choose the name of one of my units, not one of my rear guards. So you can put back a Fantasy Petal Storm in your drop zone, change your name, well, 6 flowers, and send it to your drop zone. Now that it's in your deck, it counts as Fantasy Petal Storm. You choose your Vanguard, who you hopefully rode this Shiryuki, and now when you use an effect to clone something, which Izushi Otome has, then you can call this directly from your deck, and bam, there you go. Remember, you can get this from its own effect if you ride it. So there's a lot of cute stuff you can do there. And everything else is going to need to be a grade 1, especially if we're going to have room for this tech slot here, which can be anything, which I might recommend you put in a grade 1. I personally, if I was playing this deck at one of those summer fests coming up, I would consider playing Honolly, considering how many Excel decks have been popular right now, like Victor, that GB8 Gold Paladin deck, and Hari. And even decks that aren't Excel can still do a lot of attacks. And yeah, we draw 11 cards, but we don't necessarily have the most shield value, considering we have a lot of important combo pieces. And we're playing stand triggers that don't have the most shield. It can be a little awkward, especially because we're really not trying to use these Soul Blast effects, because they're an emergency button. Our soul, if we use one of these on a block effect, then we're not going to have the soul to use this effect for like a follow-up turn. Like, what if they check their over trigger and we have to try and push a second time? It cuts us off of a second push. And one of our strides, you might remember Victor from some infinite loop nonsense, but he has an effect. The second effect is what matters most. You can Soul Blast one to call him when an attack doesn't hit. But if you have 2 of them face up, you can just call him on top of the other copy of him, so you can cash in all of your soul for extra attacks. And if you are caught without a combo, you can use your Soul Blast 1 in order to check your top 7 to try and find combo pieces and defensive pieces. Because our soul is relatively tight in this deck, we don't have too much way of soul charging, so we have to be relatively careful. Our soul mostly comes from our rides. And speaking of rides, our best ride is Ataka. The generic V grade 3 searcher, kinda. You check the top 5 for a grade 3 card, add it to your hand. If you did add a card, you discard one. And then if you've done clan mechanic, +5. Our clan mechanic is having cards with the same name. So if any of our 2 units have the same name, he gets +5, which is pretty easy to do, especially since Huanchanter copies a name. And Hiden Scroll is going to get 2 cards with the same name, so he's pretty easy to get up and working. Another useful card is Senbei. Senbei is very interesting. His first effect lets you counterblast 1 to put a card from your drop zone on the bottom of your deck, and then you can like shuffle around some power, but that's not what it's really just because it says choose a card, not normal unit. Card. So you can put back your over trigger, you can put back your heal triggers, you could put back an Elementaria that ended up in your drop zone for whatever reason. You can put back anything. And this deck needs certain cards to be in the deck, so having him to put those back is nice. But then his second skill, to Soul Blast 1 to put a card from your circle that's not Vanguard on the bottom of your deck and draw 2, is really impactful. If you've drawn like too many Fright Sickles, then you can put the Fright Sickle back into your deck, draw 2, call a Hiden Scroll to get back in your groove. If you're Omega bricked, you can use him on your first stride to try and find something to do, put back, because it just says any card. So you can put back Drag Veda, because if you keep drawing Drag Veda, you can keep putting it back, and then eventually you'll check it. And if you check it while you're on the train, then they just lose, because you get the extra restand of your board and the extra draws off of it. So it can be like if you count the attacks as a plus and you get all 4 attacks and all 4 draws plus the extra triple drive, it's a +11. You count their attacks as something they have to block as a minus for them, plus for you, which is just backbreaking. It's just ridiculous. It sounds a little quirky to count on your over trigger, but if you never play to get lucky, you never do, and you can use this card to slowly increment the chance that you get lucky, because he puts cards back, and one of our G guards lets us put back cards as well. The Ambush Demon Stealth Rogue, Shirahagino. Yeah, Shirahagino. She says you counterblast 1, she gains 10k shield, and then you get the red text to allow yourself to put cards back into your deck after you guard with them. So you can put back your combo pieces and your triggers, which is really neat. And since we are playing the Heal Guardian promo, you can use this to call her, and then you can still put your heal triggers back into your deck. This card is also pretty neat, considering our G-Guards can be kind of lackluster. This can just be better than our G-Guard sometimes, so we'll actually use its guard skill. You remove a heal trigger, then you choose one of your units, you search your deck for a card with the same card name as that unit, and you get to put it back at the bottom of your deck afterwards. It gets 15,000 shield, and then if you choose a grade 2 or greater, you can counterblast 1, and your Vanguard gets plus 5. So assuming you have another copy of Yasui in your deck when you do this, Yasui has no shield, but it gets plus 5,000 power, and then the 15k shield. That takes you all the way up to 41, and then you stay at 16, which can be pretty clutch, especially when some of our triggers are stands, and we check a stand and really wish we had gotten just a little more power. We can use this to make it so we get a little more power. Last but not least, I'd been like, wow, what do I do? What are the last grade 1s to use? Grade 1 perfect cards from V are really clutch. The ones where you ride them and you get to draw and then discard come in absolutely clutch. The extra filter off of that, or the loot, as a Magic player might call it, is very important, especially if we're trying to get our combo set up and we don't have a Yasui. We get the extra draw off of it, and then we can use Huanchanter to put back normal units. So if our perfect guards and heal guardians are normal units, we can really extend our longevity. I noticed that even though I would draw 11 cards, having none of these in my deck, I still felt like I was really frail despite my huge hand. But now that I have these cards in the deck feels so much more resilient. You have so much more capacity to live, especially when we squeeze in an Elementary of Sanctitude. This card is very clutch, but it can be very difficult to find the space for it sometimes, especially when you're really concerned about having enough unit cards. But we just barely squeezed it in. And then counting our starter and our mystery flex slot, that's all 34 non-triggers. We did it. We squeaked it out. Just barely. We'll get to the triggers in a second, because then they're kind of secondary to the real meat of the deck here. But if you don't want to do anything too techy per se, you can just put in a second Shiryuki. I don't know if I would do that personally. I think that I've found myself using counterblasts for defensive skills a lot, especially when I'm starting to use Huanchanter and my counterblasts for extension. I think that the plus 20 is enough. Going up to plus 30 is a little ridiculous, especially when you actually use Izushi Otome's skill. She costs a counterblast. So you don't need to use that effect, but it's a decent effect. You get to get 2 cards, and you get to return a card to your deck. I guess I keep mentioning Izushi Otome, so you can read her. Her continuous effect at the bottom says all of your cards that share a card name can attack from the back row. And then you can counterblast 1 to choose a normal unit from your drop zone, put it on the bottom of your deck, and turn a card in your G zone face up. Choose 2 of your rear guards, search your deck for a card with the same card name as each of those chosen units, and call it to rear guard. So you can use her and Huanchanter to, even if you're out of those cards that you wanted to call from your deck, you can use Huanchanter to put back one thing, her to put back another, and then bam, you can get exactly what you wanted from your deck. I wish you would come into focus. So inconsistent with stained camera. But that's how you get those 9 attacks. Your 3 Excel circles, your 3 back row circles, and your 3 regular front row circles all add up. And then they all get the buff from Shiryuki, which I usually just treat the buff as a plus to my units, or to my attacks, because it makes the math a lot easier. Because a lot of the time you say swing for like 19, and then they're like, okay, guard the 10k, and like, no, 19 on your 3k, you need blah. So if I just say 29 instead, and I make it clear to my opponent that that's how I'm representing things, it can usually speed up games. And remember, you need to be playing relatively quickly, because the clock can really get against you, especially if you get into like a really grindy game where your opponent's checking good defensive triggers, and they have some interaction, and you can't just wombo combo them. The games can go on for quite a while, especially if you have to think about your plays. It can really cut down on your clock. So having a way to burst through can be very impactful. Back to our main deck here. Our last little slot. If you are really struggling, you feel like that you've played it a bunch of times and you're really upset with your inconsistencies, you're probably just getting unlucky. The math supports that this deck is relatively consistent, but if you wish you had just a little more consistency, then you can put back in the 4th Owazu, because that's how I just cut the 4th one to make room for it. And I really haven't regretted it. I was having like Owazu tunnel vision for a while. For a while, I was like, Owazu is more important to draw than Fright Sickle. But that's not necessarily true. I just, I get like tunnel brained on that sick combo where Owazu is the whole thing. It's just so cool to me. But you don't need Owazu. He's just kind of, he fits in all of the little gaps. So I felt like I didn't need to have a whole playset of a card that's filling gaps, because the deck didn't have as many gaps as it used to anymore, especially with our defensive stuff. It just suddenly felt so much more resilient and whole. We have a really powerful top end. This is just enough to break through. We have a really nice little grindy early game. Early game, as in your turn 3. And you have this extra defensive stuff that I just didn't feel like I need as much like glue anymore. So then with this, you can do whatever. Like I said, you can play Honolly. You can play Honolly outs, like Stealth Fiend Silhouette here. She has Shadow Stitch. Well, it's not the keyword Shadow Stitch, but when her attack doesn't hit, you put her on the bottom of your deck, choose one of your opponent's units, and bot deck that too. So she's a 9k, so if you just put her on a regular circle and swing, she doesn't hit, you bottom deck her, and then you bottom deck their Honolly or their Taser Lage, and then you don't have to deal with it anymore. I mentioned Taser Lage because our worst matchup is Deep Police. Even worse than Mega Colony is Deep Police. It is very difficult for us to beat that deck. Very, very difficult. When I played this deck for extensive testing at BCS Vancouver at the beginning of the year, not counting the stream game that I lost because I was rattled from getting a game loss before we started because I forgot to put my G-Zone in my deck list because I was just here to hang out and test and not to win. Making top cut was not even like a possibility in my mind. But I was actually surprisingly close to topping with this deck. I could have won that stream game if I was playing better. I like fucked up my combo. We were both having a lot of fun and being like, yeah, for content, I'm gonna do this silly thing. So like at one point, when I lose, I call a perfect guard, and then a whole bunch of other shield. Don't use the perfect guard so that I can put them all back in my deck, so that I can have maximum triggers in my deck. But they were doing the same thing too. So they have a 3-pass, and they're like, yeah, for content, first check everything Vanguard, second check everything Vanguard, third check everything Vanguard. So you're just having fun. So that game didn't like feel like a tournament game per se with the way everything went. So I didn't really want to count that since we were both just having fun at the end of the day. That one was more like a fun game. But the other 6 rounds, I won 4 of them when I didn't play against Deep Police, relatively convincingly. And then when I played against Deep Police, I was kind of close, but I wasn't that close. So I felt like the deck needed to be retuned to beat Deep Police. So you could have a Hanali out here, like Lady Silhouetta, or there's a grade 2 that lets you negate your opponent's skills in that same column. Let me show you. Rain Element Pecan. When he's placed GB, all of your opponent's units in the same column lose their effects and cannot gain them. So you can, if they stack like the Hanali and the Taser Lage in the same column, you can negate it. It's okay. And then there's also White Heron, who is a perfect guard that lets you countercharge if you have another copy of herself in the drop zone, which is pretty cool. It is pretty cool, but she says when placed on Guardian Circle from hand, which, you know, you usually do that, but some of our G-Guards can make that kind of challenging, because we have G-Guards that let us block with stuff on board or block from deck with... We can do things with our G-Guards without calling them from hand, so she can be a little mismatched, but like you could like play 3 of her so that you can have some countercharge G-Guard or countercharge perfect guards, which is cute. Again, I said that you could play Peeker, who would let your Yasuo become basically at 13k. If your Vanguard's an 11k, when it's attacked, give it +2. It's worded like that so that you can stack them. So like if you had multiple Peekers in a different deck, then your Vanguard could be like a defensive 15, which is really cute. Come on. There we go. Oh, and they gave him resist. That's super cool. I forgot about that. Yeah, he didn't used to have resist back in the day. They eroded him. And I've been mentioning Hanali a lot. Hanali doesn't do what it says on the tin anymore. This old fancy one. It still has the same continuous effect, where if it's the 5th battle of the turn or more, rearguards cannot attack the Vanguard unless they pay Counterblast 1. It has 10k shield now instead. It still is from all clans and nations. And instead of having that skill where you have to pay pseudo Counterblast in order to call it, it now has an effect where you can bind it or remove it, I guess, so that you can't like recycle them. And now only your opponent has to pay the Hanali skill. You, the player, gain the red text of when your opponent's rearguard attacks the Vanguard. If it's the 5th battle or more, they have to counterblast. So I would consider strongly playing Hanali or a D-Police out. I have not got to do too much extensive testing after the event against D-Police specifically. I've done a lot of testing myself, but I have not been playing against any of my D-Police friends for a long time. They live pretty far away from me, so it's tough to find that. And I've been playing a lot of Standard recently, so I haven't been sweating it up trying to grind it out. So that's homework for you. If you guys really want to take this deck to tournaments, I would recommend practicing your D-Police matchup, but then also testing against Excel decks, because if you go second into another Excel deck, it can be really easy to get blown out. So you can see, like, maybe then you can like kind of hedge a little bit, because I added a very sick anti-D-Police deck in the G zone, and we'll get to that. Maybe it'll be enough, maybe it won't. It'll probably depend a lot on the board state. But with D-Police being a lot less popular now, maybe you just want to forego it altogether. And if you think the meta is focusing towards Excel clans, then you can play Hanali. But based off of walking around judging Long Beach, the format seemed really wide open. There was a lot of different decks being played, and there was a lot of different strategies. There was a lot of stuff going on, and D-Police did not seem as popular as it did before. So that's why I'm leaving this slot open to be whatever your heart desires. It's a gift from me to you. I hope you enjoy it. That about covers it for our tech slot. I can't really think of too much else to say about it. The last little things we want to cover here is our 4th perfect guard is a draw trigger perfect guard from V. Leaves Mirage, because we have this lets us have our diversified interaction of sorts, where like they see these and they're like, aha, swing Vanguard, zeros only. Okay, block. They see this, swing Vanguard, no zeros. Okay, block. You can get people. That happened when I was playing it at Vancouver. Somebody saw these, so they went into a stride that negated them, and I had Leaves Mirage. And then I was playing against Oracle Think Tank. These really saved my life. And so did Senbei. I used Senbei to put back my Dreg Veda. And then they were cooked to... They had stuck their Overtrigger so that they would be safe for a turn. But they no-guarded my Vanguard swing at 5. So if I checked my Dreg Veda on those drive checks, or since I was at 2, since I was blocking so aggressively, I had 4 damage checks plus any heals. So I had like 7... I guess I wouldn't heal. I mean, I could. 7 or 8 drive checks, or checks in general, to find Dreg Veda and win. And I did. So there you go. Especially, if you never play to get lucky, you never do, right? If I had like put back something else to try and extend my combo further, or not use that skill at all, if I wasn't trying so hard to thin my deck for everything, then that wouldn't have happened. You gotta, they said something like that in the anime, you gotta make a miracle. If you never play to get lucky, you never do. You won't always get lucky, but if you try, you might. Sometimes. Eventually. The law of large numbers and stuff. I showed you these earlier. We have 2 Stride Fodder perfect guards, or critical triggers, not perfect guards. 2 Stride Fodders, because we don't want to be riding or discarding we want to ride the Shiryuki. We don't want to discard it to stride later on in the game. So to counter out that, we need 11 cards to stride still. Then we have 2 Shiryukis. We have 2 of these crits. We were able to make room for these 2 Stride Fodder crits because we're playing 2 grade 1 perfect guards. And since I didn't really know what other grade 1s to play anyways, everything worked out hunky-dory. Because I could play a Stride Fodder grade 1 if it didn't have the same name as Ataka. And I would like to be playing the V Ataka because it has 6k more numbers on offense, 5k more on defense for 11k total if you got both halves of the card for whatever reason, which you can since our G cards let us block with stuff from board, kind of. And the Stride Fodder can only search Yasui if we already have a grade 3, which sometimes we don't. It only works on rear guard when we're trying to ride it on our Vanguard since our grade 1 count is relatively low. And this can get us Shiryukis and heal triggers as well. So in the end, I really just want to be maxed out on V Ataka. It felt very important. Lastly, to wrap things up, we've got 4 of the History Collection crits, the G crits, where if you're on a Stride Bearer, they move to your soul to give your Vanguard +5 after it attacks, which isn't a GB skill, but that doesn't matter anymore because we get to do our History Stride plays. And then when we check them on defense, we draw a card, which is pretty clutch. It was really difficult to bring myself to cut the draw triggers because with the 7 draws on defense, 4 heals, and an over trigger, if you could just like kind of tank things, you just kept saying no guard, no guard, no guard, and you would just get rewarded with amazing defensive triggers since all of your triggers were so strong on defense. But the grade 1 perfect cards went in super clutch, and so do the extra crits, because people would very consistently be like, oh, you're playing stands and draws? No guard your Vanguard, take 1, and then they can save their perfect guards. But now you can punish them for that by checking a crit and hitting them for a lot more than they wanted to take. And I don't know, just in case you aren't familiar with Heal Guardians, like you're not a premium player, every clan has a card that does the same thing. When you haven't ridden a grade 2 yet this fight, you can, when you block with it, you get to give your Vanguard +10, or you get to give the attacking unit -2 crit. And then if you place it while you have no cards in your damage zone, you can like soft core take a damage. That comes in really clutch because remember our combo requires us to take a damage. We want to be able to pitch things to stride without them counting as Stride Fodders. We need actual grade 3s. And the early game can be really rough for us if we go second. So I definitely would recommend playing an entire playset of this instead of the resource heals. If you are not familiar with resource heals, every clan has one where when you use them to G-guard, I don't recall if you have to guard with a specific G-guard or not. I don't think you do. You get to bind another heal trigger from your drop zone and then countercharge or soul charge. I don't believe it's both. Either way, in this deck, as much as we would love the resources, the fact that it's a grade 3 is extremely important, and I would not trade that for the world. That's our whole main deck here. What things didn't I play? What are we missing out on? Honestly, there are not very many playable Murakumo cards outside of this. At first, I was playing Wisteria Flower Stealth Rogue Takahime, who, when placed Vanguard, checks the top 7 for Yasui to add to your hand. You don't have to discard, which is neat. And then it has like a worse version of Yasui's on stride effect, because when your Vanguard with Yasui in its card name was placed, that still works when you stride. So you could counterblast one to call something, and it's not a shadow clone. Oh, you have to call from your drop zone. I forgot about that. It's just, it didn't feel very impactful. That Deep Police playing friend that I haven't played with in a while, they used to call some of his cards cheerleaders. He would put a card in his deck, and it wouldn't do anything except just kind of like sit there and look pretty and like block. It didn't do anything. So he would call them, they would sit on the side of the game, not contributing to the game. It's kind of like a cheerleader, right? They're there and they're cute and they're supporting you in one way or another, but they're not actively contributing to you winning. So I just ended up cutting it. These cards have felt so much more impactful than she ever did. You could play the Shoto Doji cards, the grade 1, which isn't going to do much. It's going to put a card in your soul and bind a card, which is deck thinning, and soul charge is cute, but it's not enough. The grade 2 I was considering because it would help facilitate the combo, but we already have so many grade 2s. You could consider this in your tech slot if you're really like Shoto Doji. I don't know. You could try it. I'm not going to stop you. I never bothered sleeving them up. I pulled them out thinking I might try them, and then just every time I thought about putting them in, I was like, no, that seems like a terrible idea, actually. You can give it a shot. I'm not going to stop you. I guess our tech slot could also be more of our defensive cards. More Perfect Guard or Heal Guardian promo if you want. There's the Shirayuki grade 1s and 2s who I had tried to play, but again, this isn't a Shirayuki deck. You could like make a whole nother version of this deck, but then the whole deck is different. It's an entirely separate deck. So the cards like Rainy Madam, who Shadow Stitch lets you move it to Soul to get a Shirayuki back, is cute, but it's not quite enough on its own. Again, this would be better if you're playing a Shirayuki deck. You could check the top 7 to add a Shirayuki, then Soul Charge 1 when your Shirayuki is placed, which works when you Stride 2, which is super cute. Oh, it didn't come into focus, sorry. Whatever, it's not really important. You aren't going to be playing this unless you play a dedicated Shirayuki deck. And then, of course, there's Jakotsu Girl, who lets you check the top 7 for Shirayuki when you Shadow Stitch. When it Shadow Stitches specifically. You can add a Shirayuki to your hand, put one in your drop zone, and if you chose not to add anything, which again, you may choose to add nothing, then you can Soul Charge 1. Other than those cards, there really isn't too much. A lot of Murakumo's cards have always been a little bit underwhelming. They have a strange issue of like, cards like Hiden Scroll are super strong. Cards like Yasui are super strong. Or some of them will be really good in like generic settings, but most of their cards at large aren't very impactful. That's why I ended up just finding the most success with generic defensive pieces, a card that becomes other cards, a card that gets you other cards, and then our dedicated combo. Because, like, again, Awazu and Huan Chanter don't really do anything. They're only as good as Fright Sickle. They're only as good as the cards you go and search and become. Fizzle wasn't released until V was over. Yeah, maybe I'm wrong about that, and it was released during V, but I'm pretty sure this card was released after V was over in a clan collection deal. That covers it for our main deck here. I think this is pretty clean, personally. 10 ones is just enough. If you have it's about a fifth of your deck. It is exactly a fifth when you count your starter, but once it's time to shuffle up and play, your starter's not in there. So if you draw 5, no grade 1, send 5 back, draw 5, you've drawn 10 cards, which is more than a fifth of your 49 card main deck. You've drawn more than a fifth when a fifth of your deck is your grade 1s. So statistically, you are expected to draw one. That means you've drawn one more often than you haven't, not that you've drawn one like 80% of the time. But then once you toss in bonus G-assist with Itohiki Girl and actually G-assisting, you can really pop off. Once you ride up to grade 1, you're kind of chilling. You have enough grade 2s where you should be relatively confident that you'll find one even if one isn't in your opening hand. And you are okay to G-assist for Yasui. Don't feel bad about G-assisting for Yasui, because Yasui enables you to do a combo that's going to draw you like 4 to 9 cards. And G-assisting is only a -1. You have to discard 2 cards, sure, but you get 1 card, so you only go down 1 total. And as long as the combo we do with the card we find is very impactful and draws us lots of cards, it'll be worth it. Think of it as abusing the mechanic and not like, oh man, this deck sucks. Where this deck is built to let G-assisting help smooth things out. Because if there was no G-assisting, maybe I'd have to do a little rearranging, but there is, so we don't. That's about it, yeah. It's pretty smooth, all things considered. It works just right. Everything is as it should be. If you don't believe me on the grade 1 stuff, you can go to stattrek.com and check out the hypergeometric distribution calculator. They actually recently added a new feature that lets you check the mean and the standard distribution, so you can get a little more insight onto the way your deck will behave as a whole. When you're checking for large numbers of cards, you can see how many you would draw on average, and the standard deviation tells you like about how much plus or minus you can expect to see most of the time. So if you go in there and fiddle around with it, you'll see the math supports me. We are already over an hour, so I don't have time to pull up a calculator and start doing it. Otherwise, we could be here for a whole nother hour, and I don't think even I want to do that. This is the recording got really messed up the other 2 times I've done this, so this is like my 3rd hour straight talking about Murakumo, and I'm kind of over it. But I really wanted to get this profile or this deck tech out to you guys because it's been sitting on my mind for a while, and I felt like I couldn't move on to playing or to showing you guys my other cool standard decks until I finished showing you the stuff that I played at that last BCS Vancouver. Alright, so for our G-Zone, of course we have to have Harmonix Messiah. Don't want to leave your home without that. We have an entire playset of the train, because the first one's going to do 2, because it flips to use the act skill. Then if we stride it again, we won't have a 3rd one if we were only playing 3. So since it's, when you look at our other strides that Murakumo has access to, this one can get you, even the ceiling, or the absolute floor where you don't have Hiden Scrolls involved, it gets you 2 attacks, and if you're getting Fizzles, 2 draws for a +4 of sorts, for no cost. Your other strides don't do that. The one I showed you before, Izushi Otome, is a counterblast to get you +2, and then maybe you can get the value from the back row attacks, but she's not as generically useful because, again, we need our Shiryukis to make this card feel very impactful, whereas most of our main deck is built around making the train impactful. We can use Victor, who's going to Soul Blast 1 to go +2, and then we can keep using Soul Blast 1s to go +1 attacks. But again, these are, considering how tight our resources can be in these decks, or in this deck, the costs on these is not negligible, whereas this is free. You get to do extra attacks and hopefully extra draws for no cost, and it has a much higher ceiling than these other ones. So just considering how powerful this card is, and how much we're built around it, it's very important to play the whole playset, and I would not recommend cutting one. However, you probably could shave and Izushi Otome. I just put in a second one because, I was playing the GB8, who's really cool. We're not going to talk about him too much since he doesn't really come up. He lets you put 2 cards from your drop zone to the bottom of your deck. Search your deck for 2 cards with the same card name as him, aka your heart card. Call them, and then they get Shadow Stitch when your Vanguard's attack doesn't hit. Move it to your Vanguard. If you do, this unit stands. Right? Move this unit instant. Okay, that's what I thought. I was pretty, because you can't, like, attack with it, and then move it, and then move it. It doesn't say move as stand, it moves in stand, so only if it was standing will it move to your Vanguard circle. This would kind of be like, I went through all the trains, or I was under, like, Hanalies and stuff, because then you can get the extra Vanguard attacks in, and you don't have to pay for the Hanali cost. You can, then finally you can use those Shiryuki skills, yippee, to get back Shiryukis, but you only have 3, so, kind of sus. But you can use, like, you can call the Shiryuki to rearguard, and then counterblast 1 when your first attack doesn't hit, to then make the other ones stronger, which is cute. The Yasui's GB2s, when they go to your Vanguard circle, will be able to be used each, so, like, you can get an extra restand from a Frightsicle, which is cute. But I had these 2 slots, because these are the 5G cards, which I'll show you in a bit. But I had 2 slots for Homura Raider, which was questionable. I don't know if it was ever a good idea for me to use Homura Raider, but I certainly did use it a few times. Not to great success, but I tried. I thought of him as like a budget version of the GB8. Not budget as in like literal budget, but budget as in I could do it. It was worse. Counterblast 2 to Persona Flip, and then he loses a drive and gets the effect to return 3 of your rearguards to your deck to stand himself. With 3 of your rearguards with the same card name, so I would like try and do some convoluted setups where I would like restand my Vanguard 2 or 3 times, but it just was not as good as I wanted it to be at all, and I felt like anytime I was doing that, I probably should have just found a way to do something else better. I could have put in Yasui Tenma. There's also Yasui Genma, who lets you give 5 units +5 in a crit when his attack doesn't hit, but that's not the best. This one lets you get the Shadow Stitch effect to counterblast 1 to basically bring back a unit that went to the bottom of your deck. Well, not to the bottom. When it doesn't hit, counterblast 1, search your deck for a card with the same card name as it and call it. So you can swing with Frightsicle, get the whiff, and then bring out a new Frightsicle, and then you can convert all of your counterblasts. But that would, again, be like if you're playing maybe countercharge PGs and Dart Spider and heckin' resource heals, then maybe it is just not coming into focus for y'all. I'm sorry. Come on. Come on. Oh my gosh. How embarrassing. Come on. Shh. Come on. Come on, please. 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 Oh my gosh. This is so embarrassing. Why was it doing it so good before? It hates this card. He's not loved by the camera. I guess it doesn't matter. If you want to know what he does... Oh, finally. You can't even read him anyway. Oh, well. You get the picture. He's not up to snuff. He's old school. Maybe we would stride that if this was G era, but this isn't G era anymore. I almost forgot to mention heckin' Dart Spider. Oh, man. Dart Spider's not in here. Anyway, it's a stand trigger that lets you move it to your soul to countercharge one. Come on, I know you can't hear his Dart Spider. Dart Spider. He's gross looking. You put him in your soul and you turn a card in your damage zone face up, which is old fashioned for countercharge one. He's okay. I've played him and he's won me games, but lots of cards will win you games. He just didn't feel like the most correct choice per se. You don't necessarily need this Izushi Otome. I just didn't quite know what to do with this less extra slot because I cut Homer Raider, and then I had 2 more slots to work with, and I definitely wanted to put in my secret anti-D-Police tech, the Progenitor of Lightning Flames Gilgal. Gilgal is super neat, but is not played very much. You counter blast 2, soul blast 1. He gets 10,000 power. He gets on-hit countercharge, and he attacks your opponent's entire board in 1 attack. D-Police is relatively invested in their board, but not so invested where they're upset if you would swing at their Taser Lages, because then she's kind of doing her job. But if you swung at Taser Lage while also swinging at their face, while also wiping their back row, that could cause them a real headache. They do care about their cards because they need to have rear guards on board in order to get big with their Vanguard on those restand, or whenever they go into their finishers. They need enough cards to do the thing, and without enough cards they don't get ungodly huge. And if they haven't been pressuring you very much all game, you can kind of just hard block it sometimes. I've hard blocked one of their attacks for like 160 something, just like slam all my hand down, and they just have to deal with it. So making it so that they are having a harder time keeping you down, so that this will advance your board state by re-raising your ceiling, but then also lower theirs because now they'll have less cards to work with, whether they're blocking the things you're swinging at or whether they're going to have to call new ones. Either way, they're going to be losing cards. And so this just helped have a huge tempo swing, and especially since the game gets a little bit grindy and we don't have that many grade 3s to pitch, being able to stride for free for the rest of the game is pretty clutch. We draw like half of our deck, so finding the Yasui for our second stride is still important. Or is not too challenging, because we draw so many cards. So I thought that was pretty clean, but I didn't quite know what to do with the other slot I got from cutting Homo Raider, and so I just figured a second Izushi Otome would be neat, because then, like, what if they over-trigger the first one, or whatever. It would just be nice to have this as an option. This, I guess, would be, if I had to give you a flex slot for your G-Zone, this is your flex slot for your G-Zone. This can be kind of whatever. I used to play, like, 3 Victors, but I shaved the 3rd Victor for the 4th Train because I felt like Train would just be stronger. You could play Dismal. Dismal, if you are unaware, if you are not a premium player, lets you block your rear guard for the whole turn, and he gains resist. Oh, he as in your rear guard. Dismal. Yep. Dismal himself has resist, which is cute. It can be really good when your opponent's trying to like retire your guardian sometimes. That's really funny. And then when placed, choose one of your rear guards, and until end of turn, that unit cannot be hit and cannot be chosen by your opponent's card effects. So it gives it protection to one of our rear guards, and our rear guards can be relatively impactful. It can be very important in our deck. We are kind of built around a crazy rear guard combo, so it can be important to keep them around sometimes. So I would consider playing Dismal, There's been a few times I wished I had Dismal. I'm not sure what I would do with this slot if I was to walk up to another tournament again. I just kind of put in another Isashi Otome because I don't know. She just felt right that I could like stride one Isashi Otome, flip Victor, and then I would have there's no other stride that I could go into that would flip up another Victor without I could stride Victor, flip up the next Victor, but I didn't think I'd have the soul for all of that, especially after using Isashi Otome, because I'm usually doing that on a Shirayuki turn. So I thought it would be neat because I could stride this, flip this up, and then I'd have the Shirayuki combo plus Victors, and that could be cute. It could be, but it's not the end of the world to play without it, but it's a strong card. So it's not incorrect to play the second copy. As for our G-Guards, we only have 4, and most of them aren't very strong. They have cute tech on them, but most of them aren't going to block for like 40,000 shield. Our first friend, Aizen, I'm not crazy. He could get 40,000 shield if our board was ever real, but our board's always going to bot deck itself, so we don't get to keep it. We choose one of our rear guards. He gets plus 10,000 shield for every copy of that chosen card. That includes the chosen unit itself, so even if it's only the one, he still gets 10,000 shield. If for some reason we chose a rear guard Yasui, it would count my Vanguard for gaining the shield at least. You can't choose him, but he counts when you're counting names. And then he gives the unit the Soul Blast one to bounce itself when the attack doesn't hit skill, which comes in really clutch, especially like if we did that play where we can search our deck for anything and call it to rear guard. We could search our deck for a perfect guard. Maybe not our current perfect guards, because our perfect guards say when placed, and this is going to move it. But this says we get to when we block with her. We choose, and when our Vanguard was attacked by our opponent's Vanguard. We choose one of our rear guards, we move it to Guardian Circle, it gets plus 5k shield. We search our deck for up to one card with the same card name as that unit, call it to Guardian, and shuffle our deck. So, like, we could intercept with a perfect card from our back row, and we don't have to call another one from our deck if we don't want to. It's really awkward to use our friend Shishizuki because the Vanguard's going to, when our opponent's Vanguard attacks our Vanguard, they're attacking for Chonkin, and we're kind of small. So, like, even if we take an Ataka, a 10k shield, and we search another at 10k shield, that's 40,000 shield total, counting her plus 5. So that only takes us to 51. Even if they're not boosted, and they're swinging for 26, I mean, I guess that's 25k pass. But, you know, they toss in a boost here, a power gain effect there. It just suddenly gets to be a 1 pass way quicker than you wish it was. So she's here because she can matter, and because one of the G-Guards we actually care about, Shirahagino, has to flip other G-Guards. She is a flippy G-Guard, so she's GB, and she costs a counterblast in addition to flipping up another face-up, or choosing a G-Guard and turning it face-up. She gets 10k shield, and then we get the red text. When we block with something, we can put it back into our deck. So this lets us recycle our over triggers, our heal triggers, our perfect guards, our combo pieces. And considering that Shishizuki is not very useful most of the time, we can usually just flip her without thinking about it. A card very similar to Shishizuki is Hogan Wing. Hogan Wing doesn't have to be our Vanguard being attacked by a Vanguard, though. I think it's just anything being attacked by anything. You search your deck for a grade 1 or greater of your rear guards, call it to Guardian Circle, and then it gets to return to the bottom of your deck at the end of the battle. So this lets you, like, if we had called the perfect guard from our deck, we could use this G-Guard to search it out and block with it. To perfect guard an attack when they like give us some like weird guard restrict where we can't perfect guard from hand or something, we can use this, search it from deck, perfect guard, and then later on in the turn we can use Aizen to then Soul Blast 1 and pick up our perfect guard. It's pretty neat. Pretty neat. And that's another reason why you could consider the resource heals in a different universe, and why we have to be kind of careful about our resource usage, is because this costs a counterblast, this costs a soul blast, and we don't have a good way of getting those back. Our deck is very tight on resources, which is why we are maxed out on the train here. I think that covers everything, though. That's our whole G-Zone, our whole main deck. I could spend a little time talking about doing a redraw exercise with this deck, but considering how long we've all been here, I think you might be able to forgive me for not doing one just this once. Especially considering I gave you 2 last time. It's relatively straightforward what your process is. You need a grade 1 to ride, so if you don't have one, put them all back. You definitely want to keep Hiki Girls because she can become something else, and she's a good thing to ride anyway. If you don't have a grade 1, it can be very tempting to keep a Yasui. If I had an Itohiki Girl, I probably would keep a Yasui. If I didn't, I would see how lucky I'm feeling that day. If I was feeling like my day wasn't going too well, I would probably consider putting back everything. But if I'm really feeling it, I'm like, oh man, today I'm blessed, then I'll keep it. But once you have if you do have a grade 1 though, then that's when you can kind of just do whatever, put back triggers you don't want, dig for combo pieces. There's all sorts of stuff you can do. It's up to you. The redraws are mostly just about riding up efficiently. Your combo will come to you if you let it, because we have Itohiki Girl to help us find it. Remember that Awazu is a 1-card combo all by himself, and that if worst comes to worst, you can just take Excel 2, draw some cards, use Senbei, draw some more cards, and you'll think of something. But you do kind of want to make sure that if you do have like a decent hand with a grade 1 to ride, then you definitely want to hold on to as many combo pieces as you feel comfortable keeping without your hand feeling really bricky and implosive. The opposite of explosive. Where you look at that hand and you're like, ooh, I could really just die, couldn't I? It could just all end real quick one way or another. But that about wraps it up for this one, folks. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave a comment. I might not check them too often, but I'm going to try and make a good habit of whenever I upload a video to check the comments from the last video. I'm going to do better about uploading. I hadn't been uploading for a while because I really wanted to do this deck tech, and this was a lot, as you can tell by the timestamp. I don't think all the standard deck profiles are going to be an hour and a half, but this one is really in depth, and I put a lot of work into it. And hopefully you can see it in action with the stream game. You can check that out. I got to do some cool stuff. One of my friends told me I got posted on Vanguard scary images, or scary Vanguard images or something. I'm not quite sure what the name of the account is. I don't really use social media like that. But you can probably find the archived game footage to see the game in action. I lose, spoiler alert, but it's really funny. It's a really cool game where we're both having an absolute blast all around. But that's about it from me. Hopefully I'll be back in about 2 weeks with another deck tech. Standard this time. If you have anything that you want to see in particular, let me know. I have access to a lot of the cards, whether I'm borrowing stuff from one of my friends or my partner is addicted to collecting cards, so I have a lot of them chilling over there. Even if they're not mine, I still have access to them. Anyway, that's been it from me. I'm me from Card Fight Crash Course. Take care of yourselves, everyone, and I'll see you next time. Bye!